Well, good morning, everyone, or maybe even good afternoon or good evening, depending on your time zone right now. Thank you very much for joining us for the webinar today. It's Introduction to Cloud Managed IT for Education, topic of the webinar. My name is Imran Edris, I'm Marketing Manager here at Meraki. What I'd like to do to start the session off today is actually just share the agenda with you guys so you know what's coming up. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about Meraki to begin with, particularly for those of you online who are less familiar with perhaps how we fit into the wider Cisco organization. I'll then move on to talking about the technology architecture that we've developed here and paying particular attention to the key differences between our architecture compared to perhaps the more traditional approach that you may be used to. We'll then move on to talking about why cloud managed IT and some of the benefits and efficiencies that this affords you. And we'll actually then spend most of our time today in a live demonstration of the Meraki dashboard itself. So at that point, what I'll do is I'll flip over to my web browser and we can take a look at the dashboard, which is the primary platform that we use to manage the entire portfolio of Meraki devices. So at that point, what I'll use as an example network to give you guys an idea of a real-life living and breathing network is actually our very own Meraki network that we have deployed at various locations around the world. So hopefully that'll give you a nice idea of a living and breathing network and the sorts of things that can be achieved. We'll come back to the presentation after the demo, and we'll just finish off by taking a quick look at all the product families we have in the portfolio. So I'm very pleased to announce that all IT professionals attending today's session for the very first time on behalf of their school or college are eligible for a free Cisco Meraki 8.11 AC access point with a 3-year cloud management license. There are some eligibility criteria. If you wouldn't mind just going to meraki.cisco.com/free AP to confirm that you meet those eligibility criteria. And then if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick call after the webinar just to confirm your shipping information so we can make sure that that access point gets to the correct person at the correct location. And you can find our contact information to confirm those details in the reminder email you'd receive for today's session, or you can visit meraki.cisco.com/contact and find the telephone number to call there. So about Cisco Meraki then, well, for those of you who do like to keep yourselves up to date with the latest technology news, we'll all know that Cisco Meraki was actually born out of an acquisition that Cisco made at the end of 2012, whereby they acquired a company called Meraki. So even before Meraki was acquired, we were the leader in cloud managed networking. And I use that term networking quite purposefully because we've actually moved on now beyond networking. The portfolio has moved on so that we are now a leader in cloud managed IT. We have a very broad portfolio, but we've really seen tremendous growth under the Cisco brand since our acquisition. We are among one of Cisco's fastest growing portfolios. We have well over 250,000 unique customers globally, and they're actually comprised of over 4.5 million devices online in the world today. And as a part of our solution, we do offer open APIs for developers at organizations or technology partners to actually be able to use the information that's within the dashboard and be able to export that and create more custom business solutions from that. And part of the business that is seeing a lot of growth, we actually have over 23 million API calls being made back to the dashboard every day now on average. So from a solution point of view, what we have is a complete cloud managed IT solution. It comprises of wireless, switching, security, SD-WAN, intelligent network insights, endpoint management, or mobile device management, perhaps a term that you're more familiar with, and security cameras. So the solution is integrated with hardware, software, and cloud services, all tied together in one very nice, neat, and straightforward bundle. So the cloud actually really increases IT efficiency, and it does so in 3 major ways. It makes it very, very manageable, very scalable, and a combination of the first two lead to significant cost savings. So the cloud is actually a turnkey installation and management. It's also always integrated with the latest up-to-date features. So at any given point in time, each Cisco Meraki hardware device is always connected to the cloud. So what this means now is that you as the IT person at your school or college don't actually have to lift a finger to update these devices. Anytime a firmware update is available, you can actually go ahead and first of all set automatic firmware updates to happen so that you don't even need to worry about it. So you just need to choose a time that firmware updates can occur. And if there are firmware updates available, it'll just update much the same way that you'd be used to in your personal life, where when you're updating the firmware to the latest firmware on your smartphone, perhaps. It's a very simple and straightforward way to do things, and it's very similar here with Meraki. You do have tighter control of those firmware updates. You can decide to participate in beta firmware, intermediary stable firmware, or the stable firmware itself, as well as roll this out and stagger the rollout across your estate. But either way, you don't have to worry about downloading firmware onto USB sticks. Gone are those days. Firmware updates are delivered seamlessly via over-the-web firmware updates. The architecture that we've developed here also scales to organizations of all sizes. We have customers who've deployed just a handful of Meraki devices at one single site, through to some of the world's largest cloud networking deployments, consisting of hundreds of thousands of devices, all being managed through Meraki dashboard. In terms of setting up Meraki for the very first time or deploying for the very first time, it's extremely straightforward. If we have an example, let's think of a very straightforward deployment. Let's say you're going to be deploying 100 Meraki devices at either one site or distributed across multiple different locations. It doesn't really matter, but the high-level process is broadly the same. So what you would do is you would place an order for those Meraki devices, and what you would get back in return is an order number. Now this order number is unique to your order, of course, and it relates back to all those devices that you ordered. So you can take that order number, copy and paste it across into the Meraki dashboard, which of course you would access from a web browser, so you don't have to be on site at your school or college that you're deploying at. You could be at home, you could be at some other location, you could even be on a beach in Hawaii sipping a Mai Tai, setting up your school's network. I wouldn't really recommend it, but you could do so. But really, that order number is how the dashboard knows that these devices belong to your organization. So once you've copied and pasted that across, the virtual inventory of your order populates in the dashboard. You can then create networks with that inventory. And by the way, you can do this as soon as you have the order number. You don't have to wait until the devices have left the warehouse or arrived on site. You can do all of this even before the devices have left that warehouse, so that when they actually do arrive on site, the devices are actually pre-configured. You can go ahead and, on the wireless, for example, set up policies, firewall rules, ASOC1X authentication, whatever that might be. You can have all of those set up so that when they do arrive, they're pre-configured. So you necessarily don't even need to be on site when they arrive. You could have somebody from maintenance just physically deploy the devices, and that's it. So as soon as the devices are provided an uplink, they will tunnel secure connection back to the cloud, download their configuration settings that you applied from your web browser, and that's it. You're good to go. So really, by utilizing all these different operational advantages that we have built into the Meraki platform, we've seen our customers able to reduce on their operational costs quite significantly. So let's move on to talking about what we've coined out-of-band cloud management. So as we go through the webinar, hopefully you'll be able to appreciate by the end of the session how scalable the architecture is. We have pretty much unlimited throughput, as we aren't often any bottlenecks by things like on-site Wi-Fi controllers or any overlay management systems that can actually pose a single points of failure for your network that we're immune to. You can actually add devices or sites to an existing Meraki deployment really very, very easily by a similar process to what I was describing earlier on for setting up a Meraki network for the very first time. All you need to do is register some more devices onto the dashboard. So if it's only a handful that you're registering, you can actually just read the serial number off the device itself, type that into the dashboard to claim it, or by that same serial number approach, by the same order number approach. But once the new devices are in the dashboard, you can drop them into a network, and they'll take on those settings. It's really that straightforward. The architecture that we've developed here is also incredibly reliable. We have multiple data centers dotted all across the globe, and actually any given point in time, each Cisco Meraki hardware device is simultaneously connected to 3 different data centers. So what this means is that if any one of these data centers was to go offline for whatever reason, seamlessly back up to the other data centers and be no interruption service for yourself. In terms of data center redundancy architecture, this is actually much the same way that Google's or Facebook's data centers operate. Even if you were unlucky enough to lose connection to the cloud, your local area network would actually still continue to function. And we offer a 99.99% uptime SLA. So let's move on to talking about security. It's a very important subject. If I can draw your attention to the diagram on the right-hand side, what we have set up here is a very simple network consisting of most Meraki devices within that green box being the network itself. But either way, it doesn't necessarily have to be all the Meraki devices. It could just be access points, could just be switches or security appliances. We appreciate that not all organizations will be in the fortunate position of being able to upgrade their entire infrastructure all in one go. So we have made Meraki devices very interoperable with other vendors' networking devices. So for example, if you want to upgrade your school or college's switches, you could do so, and Meraki switches would interoperate perfectly well with wireless access points and firewalls you may have from another vendor. In that sort of hybrid scenario, you just do have to bear in mind that you would only be able to manage the Meraki devices from the Meraki dashboard. So either way, traffic from the Meraki devices, as it gets to the ISP, we have two very separate streams of traffic beyond that point. So we have the solid blue arrow, which is actually showing us user traffic, and you can see that clearly bypasses the cloud. We have no interest in user traffic passing through the cloud whatsoever. It wouldn't be a scalable architecture if we had it doing so. The only information that is going to the cloud is a secure encrypted connection flowing back management data only. And this is information such as how many megabytes of YouTube a certain client used on a certain day, etc. So because of the way we have the architecture set up means we are able to support the build of fully HIPAA and PCI compliant networks. If you're not familiar with those standards, probably not all that important for education, but they are a good indication of the level of compliance that we do have. So HIPAA is a very important healthcare standard in North America, whereby no organization does any business within this very lucrative industry without having compliance to HIPAA. And PCI stands for Payments Card Industry Compliance. We do also hold third-party security audits as well as daily penetration tests to really bump up on our security measures. If you'd like to read up a bit more about our reliability and security information, please feel free to log on to meraki.cisco.com/trust. So why Meraki for education then? Well, we have a very extensive portfolio of Meraki wireless access points, really ranging from the entry level through to market-leading creme de la creme of performance for wireless, where we have up to 2.5 gigabits of throughput with things like multi-gigabit also included in there. So we've got extremely high-performing hardware, but without the high maintenance that you might normally associate with such sophisticated technology. So it's very simply managed with the dashboard, and it's designed to deliver high performance in classrooms of all sizes. We also have safety and security in mind, of course, to keep students, teachers safe with options ranging from perimeter network security through to physical security for your campus or your school or college with the security cameras. We also have built-in tools to allow the IT team to troubleshoot easier and quicker issues that may arise. So it's, first of all, very, very simple to use. We have out-of-the-box analytics and tools to deliver best-in-class IT, things like cable testing, perform packet capture. You can all do those functions, for example, on the dashboard without necessarily being having to be on site. We do also have endpoint management included. So this is our systems manager solution. You may be more familiar with it as mobile device management, but you're able to manage thousands of iOS, Android, Mac, PC devices from one single dashboard and make one-to-one BYOD initiatives a reality rather than having to worry about how you are actually going to manage all of those devices. So Meraki is also an increasingly valuable IT investment. So the The model for purchasing Meraki is a very simple and straightforward one. We have a one-to-one ratio between licensing and hardware. So for example, if you want to purchase 10 Meraki hardware devices, you also purchase 10 licenses. And licenses come first for a few different durations. We have an annual license, 3-year license, 5-year license, up to 10 years if you so wish. But the licenses are all inclusive. We have no per feature licensing. Everything is included from day one. And you can have as many users on a license as you wish. It's simply one per hardware device. And that's important to consider. It may not seem like a big thing, but actually when you are going through a cost analysis or feasibility analysis, when you're considering various different solutions, you probably would consider to some degree operating costs for that particular network today and perhaps into the future. So when you are considering the future operating costs, because Meraki licensing is tied back to the hardware devices themselves rather than the number of users you have on your network, you can actually calculate with a certain degree of accuracy and confidence the sorts of costs that you might incur in the future. But finally, and most importantly, what is included within Meraki licenses are firmware updates. And firmware updates are the vehicle that we use to deliver new features, and we do so at least on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, once you've been through the firmware update and you go into the Meraki dashboard, you'll see new features and functionality popping up absolutely free of charge and without any complexity. So here's just an example of some features that were delivered through those firmware updates. So if you were a customer that had purchased Meraki at the beginning of this timeline, you wouldn't have had access to all these different features. However, without having to lift a finger or spend an extra penny, cent, dime, whichever current currency you might use, by the end of the timeline, you would have had access to all of these different features. Things like on the wireless side, device-based group policies for iPads, Android devices, location analytics, Apple Fastlane support, RF profiles, wireless health, which really does help IT admins to isolate very quickly issues that clients might be experiencing on the wireless. On security side, we have geography-based IP firewall rules, advanced malware protection integration. On the switching side, we have Mac-based administration, topology view. All these different functionalities were delivered through firmware updates. And we are, of course, trusted by thousands of schools and colleges, not just in the UK, but globally. Here are some examples of logos that have deployed Meraki at their school or college. You can find out more information about some of these logos at meraki.cisco.com/customers, or perhaps if you do have an appetite to speak to a like-minded or a similar type of school or college, please feel free to get in touch with us and be happy to broker that conversation with an existing Meraki school or college. So let me flip over to my web browser now. We can take a look at a live demonstration of the Meraki dashboard in action. So as I mentioned earlier on, what we use for today's demonstration purposes is actually our very own Cisco Meraki network that we have deployed at various locations around the world. So as I log into our dashboard, this is the very first view that I see. It's a really nice overview on Google Maps showing me where in the world we have cloud-managed networking locations. And the color of each of these locations are as intuitive as they look. So green meaning the health of the network, that particular location is healthy, devices are online. And red or green or amber or grey means we have some offline devices at that particular location. So I know that network quite well. So I know the amber location we see here on the west coast of the US, actually where our global HQ is in San Francisco, California, which incidentally is where most of our engineering development team sits. So they're always changing our settings of devices, which requires to be turned off, hence why we see an amber location there. However, if I didn't know all of that and I just logged into the dashboard to see at a glance that there are locations that require attention, I can very easily navigate my way over to them simply by clicking into the map here, or I can actually search a particular network from this table on the right hand side. So if I'm interested in finding out more about what's happening with our office in San Francisco, I can just simply type in San Francisco here, and I can go drill down into Meraki San Francisco. it takes me over to our network in San Francisco, and the page we're on right now is showing me all the clients that have been connecting to our network over the past day. So I can change this time period to be whatever we'd like: last day, last 2 hours, last week, 30 days, etc. Let's just choose the last week, in fact, to give us more data to look at. So while that is loading, I want to take a small step back and explain the UI that we're actually looking at here. So we're actually now one click away from all of the monitoring and configuration information on all the various Meraki device types we have deployed at our office in San Francisco. So as you might expect, we have the entire suite of Meraki devices excuse me, deployed at our offices in San Francisco, including Meraki switches, wireless, systems manager, Meraki cameras, security. So on the left-hand navigation menu, you can see there's a line item for each one of those device types. So as I hover above switches, for example, I'm showing all the monitoring and configuration capabilities for the switches. Similar thing for the wireless, systems manager, for the security cameras. It's all here in one place. So again, just to remind you, don't have to have the entire suite of Meraki devices deployed. We have all of these because we have everything deployed here, but that's just an example of the advantages that you can have as you add more and more product lines of Meraki to your organization. You'll be able to manage them from one single place, so you won't have to log off the dashboard to then go find out more information about your switches. If you only have wireless deployed, for example, if you add switches, it'll all be in one place, tied together neatly. So you can see now we've had over 2,800 client devices connecting to our network over the past week, and we have more information about all those devices that have been connected to the network. We can see their status. So because we have more than just wireless or just switching deployed, we can see how the client got onto the network, whether that was using a wired connection, denoted by a little Ethernet icon in the status column, and that's information coming from the Meraki switches, or a client that got onto the network using a wireless connection, denoted by the little wireless icon, and that's information coming from Meraki wireless access points. We have more information about all the clients that connected to the network. We have their description, when they were last seen, amount of data they used while they were connected, operating system they're running, IP address, any policies that apply to the client's device, and if I hit the little plus button here on the table, we can add and remove columns, really customize this view to suit our own specific needs. You can also add, download all the data in the table as a CSV or XML file to manipulate further. However, we do have some basic search capabilities built right into the dashboard. So for example, if you wanted to find all of the iPhones connected to your network over the past week, well, you can simply just type in iPhone here in the search box, and it performs real-time Google-esque search, immediately showing you over 400 clients, over 400 iPhones, I beg your pardon, connected to our network over the past week. We can also search for Android devices. If I type in Android, we've had over 81 devices, Android devices connected to the network over the past week. I can also search by OS. If I type in Windows, we've had over 500 connected to the network over the past week, so fairly popular on our network. So this search box really is very powerful. Effectively, it's like Googling your own network in real time. So finally, also from this page, what we have is complete layer 7 visibility. So it's a pie chart here on the right hand side saying applications. I can expand that out, and we can now take a look at all the different applications that have been transferred across our network in San Francisco. So just a reminder, because we do have switching and wireless deployed at our office in San Francisco, the usage here is actually an aggregated view of usage right across our network, wired and wireless. So let me sort the table by usage to give a bit more meaning, and let's show more than 20 results. So all these different applications have been reported here automatically. There's nobody from our IT team that had to sit here and say, okay, these sorts of packets of traffic need to be categorized as YouTube, these other packets of traffic need to be categorized as iTunes. All that's going on automatically in the background. And you're presented with really easy to digest information out of the box. All you need to do is set up how you want clients to connect to the network, allow them to connect, and all this information from a monitoring point of view is collected automatically, information about all the clients, the applications, etc. Hopefully you can also see that each application is also reported as a hyperlink, so I can actually click into any one of these applications and find out more details about who's been using that particular application over the past week. So if I just pick on, let's say for example, Facebook, and drill down into Facebook. So I'm showing another table here now, showing me a list of all the clients that have been using Facebook over the past week. I have the description of the clients, their manufacturer, operating system running, and the amount of the data they used for Facebook. So again, hopefully you can see that each description of a client is actually showing up as a hyperlink. So again, I can click into any one of these clients and find out more information about that client and drill down into a particular client. I'm actually going to sort by OS. I'm going to try to purposefully pick out a client that would have connected to the network using a wireless connection, so we can show off some of those wireless features. Let's choose a client with some usage. Let's choose this particular client here, Android client number 8. So I click into that. That client wasn't able to be found. Let's go pick another client. Let's choose a Mac OS 10 client. Let's choose 28. So here we're taking a look at more information about that one particular client. We can see the status of client denoted by this little wireless icon showing us the client connected to the network using a wireless connection. The icon is grayed out right now, so it means the client isn't connected to the network right now, but they were last seen on the network on the 11th of September. The SSID they were last authenticated to was called Meraki Corp, and we can see information about the access point they were last authenticated to, and again you can see that information is showing up as a hyperlink, so I can actually open that in a new window or a new tab. So I can really go from looking at more information about one client to really in one click navigating my way over to more information about the access point the client was last authenticated to. So I can see here now the name of the access point, model number, MAC address, address of the access point, SSIDs it's broadcasting, channels it's broadcasting on, its LAN IP, public IP, gateway, DNS, Ethernet information. Because it is plugged into a Meraki switch, I can see the exact port it's plugged into as well as the name of the switch. Again, all that information is showing up via hyperlink, so I can actually click into those if I want to navigate my way over to information about the switch it's plugged into. I can see the tags, any tags that we've given this particular device. The tab we're on right now is the summary tab, so hopefully you can see this uplink traffic moving around, chart of uplink traffic, real-time information we're looking at. Moving further down, we don't see anything in the current clients field because it's actually pretty early in the morning in San Francisco, so I wouldn't expect to see many clients connected to the network. As we move further down, we can see high-level overview of the status of this particular access point, whether the radius, DNS, DHCP, ALP are okay, and they all are here. You can take a look at historical information about what this access point has been up to over the past 2 hours, day, week, etc. So over the past 24 hours, it's been online, uninterrupted. I can also take a look at the usage over the past 24 hours, as well as all the clients that have been using this particular access point over the past 24 hours. As we work our way through the tabs at the top, if I go to the event log, I can take a look at a detailed event log of everything this access point has been going through. If we go to tools, we have a rich tool set built in here to be able to execute remotely, so I can actually ping a URL or ping this access point right here from dashboard. I can blink its LEDs, run a throughput test, trace route, ALP table, all from the comfort of the dashboard. So this particular access point is thousands of miles away from where I am today in London, but I'm still able to execute all these tools. Take a look at more information about LAN. This was shown in the summary tab as well, but we can take a look deeper if we wanted to. But we also can take a look at the radio frequency environment of this particular access point. So most Meraki wireless access points actually have 3 independent radios, one which is dedicated as a scanning radio. So what that means is we're able to use that radio for 2 reasons, for security as well as performance. So that radio is able to scan your local radio frequency environment 24/7, searching for, from the security point of view, rogue devices and rogue SSIDs, any of which are found are quarantined automatically, as well as then for performance purposes, scanning your local radio frequency environment, searching for better channels, less crowded channels to be on, and if any are found, it'll automatically switch over to those, whilst also simultaneously being able to serve clients at both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio frequencies. So I can take a look at the RF environment around this access point on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radios, and then I can take a look over the past day, week, etc. So if I just look at the past day, we can see some wireless events have been highlighted and at the top. So if I navigate my way to one of these ones here, I can see there's 4 events that occurred here for auto power change. I can go into details, and it's mainly telling me that the power was changed, auto RF was changed to improve network performance. And the power here was reduced to decrease network interference. So that's all going on automatically. And at that particular point in time, we can take a look at how many active clients there were, 17 at that particular point in time. We can take a look at channel utilization, usage, etc. There's a lot of powerful information available to us at our fingertips. I'm going to move back to the clients page. So we don't see anything in the signal strength bar here for the clients because the client's not connected to the network right now, but if they were connected, we'd be able to see a real-time signal strength of their wireless connectivity to the access point. I forgot to actually mention, first thing that might have actually drawn your attention is this view on the right-hand side. We're actually able to upload your own organization's floor plans and actually place access points exactly where they might exist in real life, which is very powerful if it ever comes to troubleshooting. So over here we can see the floor plan of the 4th floor of our offices in San Francisco, and you can see these green icons, each one of them being a wireless access point, and the brightly colored one is the access point that was last authenticated to by this particular client. As we go further down, we can take a look at information about the user, device type. It's automatically been identified. Capabilities, wireless capabilities of the device have been identified. Usage, you can take a look at for the past week, for example. So I can take a look at the bandwidth profile over the past week, any policies that have been applied to the client's device, network credentials, IP address, MAC address, VLAN it's on. I can also ping this particular client right here from the dashboard. And because this particular device is enrolled into Meraki Systems Manager, we're able to see an insight into what's on the device itself. You can see there's one app missing here according to the profile that was applied to this particular device. We can see the installed software, WebEx Teams, etc. And where on the previous page we were taking a look at applications being used right across the network in San Francisco, we can actually now also take a look at applications this one client's been using over the past week. So we can see WebEx, we can see Facebook, that's how we found the client in the first instance, of course, Slack, Gmail, all these different applications, again, populated automatically. You might also see some destinations that are blurred out. Now, those destinations are blurred out because I'm using a read-only login to the dashboard today for demonstration purposes. If I was log back in with my administrative account, be able to see specific HTTP destinations clients been visiting over the past week. And that's, of course, very sensitive information, so we just blur that out for the read-only logins. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and ask you to imagine that you've gone ahead and deployed Meraki Wireless at your own organization, and you've got all this rich reporting information at your fingertips, and you've been going through that data much like we have been today, and you come across this particular client, and let's say that for your organization you deem this client's usage of Facebook as excessive and abusing their network privileges. So what can you as the IT person at your school or college do about this? Well, first of all, we can come down into device policy here and see it's set to bypass splash. However, we can also go ahead and simply select blocked. So we can very easily get rid of this user off the network in this way, and we can even leave the user a little message saying, please see IT. So this is great. Now what's going to happen is next time this client tries to connect back to the network, they'll firstly won't be able to, and secondly they'll be presented with a splash page which asks them to see IT. So it really is how simple and straightforward as it is to get rid of nuisance clients off your network in real time. So one thing that, however, didn't do, it didn't go back and undo the bandwidth abuse that the client may have committed already. So we can't go back in time yet anyway, but what we can do is utilize the built-in firewalls in each and every Meraki wireless access point to go ahead and proactively build in some layer 7 firewall and traffic shaping rules to prevent this sort of behavior from occurring in the first instance. So let's see how we can do that. So if I hover above wireless here, I can go to configure and firewall and traffic shaping. And firewall and traffic shaping rules are configured on a per SSID basis. So you just select the SSID you want to configure in the drop-down menu here, and you can configure up to 15 SSIDs per network. So hopefully plenty of SSIDs available there to configure. I'm just going to use an unconfigured SSID as an example. So you can add layer 2 and layer 3 firewall rules. So first of all, layer 2, you can go ahead and enable or disable LAN isolation, available in bridge mode only. Layer 3 firewall rules, so we have one applied here to allow wireless clients access to the LAN. So that's perfectly acceptable and fine if it's an SSID that you're setting up which will require clients to use local resources such as printers, for example. Or maybe you are configuring something like a guest SSID, which is probably best practice to deny wireless clients access to the LAN. So you can just change this policy from allow to deny, and now clients do not have access to the LAN. That's straightforward. As we go further down, we can go ahead and also block applications and content categories by layer 7 firewall rules. We don't have any applied here right now, but I can go ahead and very easily add a layer 7 firewall rule. And I'm actually going to go ahead and add a layer 7 firewall rule for Facebook, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier on. So if we want to get rid of Facebook altogether off this SSID, this is how we would do it, and we can do it in a couple of different ways. First way is by simply just typing in facebook.com here, and that's gotten rid of Facebook off this SSID completely now. It's really that simple and straightforward. But maybe you wanted to get rid of social media applications in general. So you could add another line here for Twitter, another one for Snapchat, or whatever it might be, Instagram. But to save you from having to add all those multiple different lines, what we've done also is pre-configured a bunch of different application categories. So if I hit the drop-down menu here, we have everything from blogging, email, through to databases and cloud services, advertising. You can also select a port or remote IP range, or a combination of the two. So for social media applications, we'd find them in the category called social web and photo sharing, funnily enough. So I can go ahead and select that. And now in one nice clean line, we've gotten rid of all social media applications off our SSID altogether. But if you didn't want to be as mean as denying any access to social media applications, we could actually remove that rule here and instead control how much bandwidth, I beg your pardon, applications use, and we do that by traffic shaping. So first of all, at a high level, we can control how much bandwidth's being used on a per client level. So at the moment it's set to unlimited, but I can throttle that down to, let's say, for example, 1 megabit per second. So now what's going to happen is any client connecting to this particular SSID is only going to be able to consume up to 1 megabit per second of bandwidth. We can also go one level beyond that and set a per SSID bandwidth limit. Again, it's set to unlimited right now, but I can also use a sliding scale to throttle that down to 5 megabits per second, for example. So what this is now going to do is guarantee that this particular SSID never consumes more than 5 megabits per second of precious bandwidth. And we could leave everything the way it's set right now and everything would work perfectly well, but we can go one level further and try to ensure that all clients have got fair usage and there's not one or a group of clients hogging all the bandwidth. So I can go ahead and say shape traffic on this SSID and go ahead and enable default traffic shaping rules, or disable them, doesn't really matter. But I can create my custom rules here, create a new rule, and I can add definition. So if I want to first, what we were talking about earlier on social media applications, I can go ahead and add one for that. So social web and fed sharing, and I can choose all social web and fed sharing. And what I can now do is set a limit, so I can really throttle this bandwidth down to, let's say, for example, 100 kilobits per second. So now what's going to happen is any client using this particular SSID to access any social media application is going to hit a bandwidth threshold of 100 kilobits per second. So it's certainly going to control the amount of bandwidth being used for social media, as well as the behavior of social media usage on the network. Other reasons you may want to consider traffic shaping rules for high bandwidth applications, so social media, Facebook, for example, or Twitter, may not contribute to bandwidth in the same way that something like video music traffic might. So you may want to control video music traffic, so I can go ahead and add a new shaping rule for that, add definition, and I can go to video music here, and I can select, again, I can be granular, or I can just select all video music, and again I can throttle that right down to, let's say, 100 again kilobits per second. So far what we've talked about are using these traffic shaping rules to throttle application for throttle bandwidth for certain applications, but we can also use them for is to prioritize applications on the network as well. So if I add new shaping rule, and you may want to do this for things like email or perhaps VoIP and video conferencing, applications you may deem critical to the function of the SSID that you've created. So if I go ahead in here and pick out, let's say, VoIP and video conferencing, and let's choose all VoIP and video conferencing, I can actually go ahead and in the per client bandwidth limit category, instead of having choose a limit selected, say ignore SSID per client limit, unlimited. So now what's going to happen is, so I didn't actually select here, video music, all video music. Now what's going to happen, the way we have things set up, is any client accessing any VoIP and video conferencing application from this SSID is going to be given as much of the bandwidth as possible. Really is going to then prioritize their experience for that application. So that's how really straightforward it is to implement rules like that. We've talked a lot about the wireless so far. Let's quickly take a look at how we can authenticate clients to the network before taking a look at some of the other products in the portfolio. Let's take a look at access control. That's how we get clients authenticated. So again, this is similarly to firewall and traffic shaping rules, done on a per SSID basis. Again, just choose your SSID from the drop-down menu, and then here are the options available. First of all, for network access association requirements, open pre-shared key with WPA2 encryption, MAC-based access control, WPA2 enterprise, with two options here, your own radius server or Meraki authentication. So Meraki authentication is just an option for organizations that are perhaps moving away from having an on-site radius server and giving them that option. So information that would normally sit on an on-site radius server, we allow for that information to sit in the cloud. Or if you did want to point it to your own radius server, you can go ahead and select My Radius Server, and a little bit further down, Radius Server option becomes available. You can add your Radius Server, pop in your host, port, and secret, and this is now going to talk back to your Radius Server to authenticate clients. So the way we have things set up right now, what would happen is if someone was trying to authenticate this particular SSID, their device's native splash page would populate requesting a username and password to authenticate to the network. Now, you can go ahead and customize the way that experience is for the client without having to compromise on the authentication. So if I leave association requirements as open, we can go to splash page here and configure a splash page, either a very simple click-through one or sign on with, and then we have some options here. So Meraki authentication, your own Radius server, your own LDAP server, your own Active Directory server, third-party credentials, this is things like Google, or Facebook Wi-Fi. So if I just choose my Radius server here, a little bit further down, Radius Splash becomes available. I can add a server, pop in your host, port, and secret. And now again, it's going to talk back to your Radius server to authenticate clients, but the way a client would experience this is different because you can go ahead and now customize that splash page with your own schools or colleges, branding, logo, crest, whatever that might be. Other splash page options are sign on with SMS authentication. So you would need to connect to your Twilio account here. If you want to do that, you can also integrate with Cisco ICE, Systems Manager Sentry. So only devices with Systems Manager that are enrolled into Systems Manager are able to access the network. And you can also set up billing if you want to as well. As you go further down, you can go ahead and configure things like NAC, Network Access Control. We've simplified this down to a drop-down menu, so if you wanted to enable that, just go ahead and enable check clients for software, antivirus software, and point them to either a remediation site or a custom URL. We can also assign group policies by device type if we wanted to, again on a per SSID basis. If I add a group policy in this way, you could do things like lock down a particular SSID for iPads only. So for example, if I choose iPad here, whitelist iPad, basically add all other, or block all other device types. Or I can actually apply group policies that we have here that we can configure within the dashboard, and you can configure your own custom ones. These ones we have configured here to different device types. Addressing and traffic on a per SSID basis, client IP assignment, you can go ahead and choose NAT mode using a Meraki DHCP, bridge mode, making clients part of the LAN, layer 3 roaming, or layer 3 roaming with a concentrator, or VPN tunnel to a concentrator. So if you do have an MX in your environment, security and SD-WAN appliance, and if you choose VPN tunnel to a concentrator, you can do this very easily. And again, it's going to be integrated because you can then just choose an MX device that you have from the drop-down menu. And you can choose the type of tunnel, full, or you can excuse me, have it for selected traffic only as well. Finally, wireless options, band selection. You have a few options here. Dual band, both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, 5 gig only. In this instance, you just have to bear in mind the 2.4 gig clients wouldn't be able to connect. Or dual band operation with band steering. So what this does is it points the clients that are capable of 5 gigahertz to that particular radio and reduces the crowding on the 2.4 gigahertz band. You can also, this is something we introduced earlier on this year, customize the RF profiles to apply in different parts of the school. Perhaps in auditorium, you may have a different RF profile than for the classroom, and you can go ahead and configure those in RF profiles. So hopefully that gave you a nice insight into the sorts of things we can do on the wireless side. There are, of course, 101 other things I can show you there, but in the interest of time, I'm going to flip to talking very briefly about the security and SD-WAN appliance, as well as then perhaps finishing off with the security cameras. So if I just navigate my way over to the security network or security appliance that we have deployed at our office in San Francisco, leave this page. So here's the security appliance we have deployed at our offices in San Francisco. It's an MX450. It's one of the larger devices. Again, the view should look familiar because we can, familiar to you after having seen the access point view. So we have the MAC address. We can see this particular device is primary. It does also have a warm spare ready to kick into action should anything happen to the primary here. So we do have high availability available in the MX security and SD-WAN appliances. They're able to support 2 uplinks, WAN 1, WAN 2, as well as failover in two different ways. So we actually had a launch a couple of weeks ago where we introduced embedded LTE modems. So you can actually have that as a failover or use it as a primary, even if you as a link if you wanted to, or a USB modem is also accepted. So we can see here information about usage, etc., of this particular device, but really this is a very multifunctional device. It does about 5 different boxes worth of jobs in one extremely unique device. We have within this box an NG application firewall, ability to configure site-to-site VPN in really very, very short order, client VPN, threat protection, content filtering, IDS, IPS, all of those different functions are happening in this box, as well as SD-WAN, software-defined wide area networking. So again, we don't have time to go through all of the features this particular appliance delivers. However, I do want to highlight one of my personal favorites, which is this appliance's ability to configure site-to-site VPN. So if you've ever configured site-to-site VPN in the past using more traditional means, you know that you'll have to go through pages and pages of command lines configuring various parameters, any one of which you get slightly wrong. You've got to go back to square one, and frankly, it can be quite a hair-thinning procedure. So we've tried to simplify this as much as possible. So the first time you come to this particular menu, site-to-site VPN, you would see the type is off. And first of all, in order to configure site-to-site VPN the way I'm about to demonstrate, you would need two things, two security appliances, one at each location, and then you can come here and go ahead and configure site-to-site VPN. So you can choose your topology, basically if you want a hub, establishing VPN tunnels with all hubs and dependent spokes, or hub and spoke topology. So if we just choose hub, that's it. We've just configured the site-to-site VPN. There's nothing else that needs to be done. You can go ahead and choose the local networks you'd like to have available for use on the VPN, but that really is it. It's all you need to do. Now, most of the time, the first time I demonstrate this to people, they don't believe me. They think I've skipped over some steps. I really haven't, and you don't have to take my word for it. If you are interested in setting up site-to-site VPN in this way, we have an excellent evaluation program here at Meraki. We can try any of the devices in the portfolio absolutely free of charge, something we'd highly recommend. And the trials are available at meraki.cisco.com/eval. It extends to not just the security and SD-WAN appliances, but to the entire portfolio. So let's finish up by taking a quick look at the security cameras. So if you are familiar with traditional enterprise security camera technology, you'll know that from a hardware perspective, what you would need in the traditional approach is the security camera itself, and then you would also need an NVR, DVR, which is essentially just a hard drive to offload the footage that camera is recording. Now, in true Meraki fashion, we've simplified the architecture so that each Meraki security camera actually has solid-state storage built into it, up to 256 gigabytes, in fact. So what we've done, and this is similar to what we did when we first started off as an organization way back in 2006, where we removed the need for an on-site Wi-Fi controller. We've removed the need for any additional hardware such as NVR, DVR, because that solid-state storage is built into each and every Cisco Meraki camera. So the architecture looks something like this. You just provide the camera PoE, and that's it. It's ready to function. And a simple example of how security cameras are used is to isolate and find security events. So let's say, for example, we had a security event that occurred at one of our locations where a security camera is. In order to isolate that footage and find out what occurred, in the traditional approach, you'd probably need to send somebody on site to retrieve the footage. Then you'd probably need to have that person watch 48 hours plus worth of accelerated footage to try to figure out when that event occurred. With Meraki, we're able to do so very differently and very quickly. So each Meraki security camera, again, of course, connects back to the cloud. No video footage is ever sent to the cloud, however. Only motion events are indexed in the cloud. So probably easier to demonstrate this, let me find a particular camera. Let's choose one of the bike room cameras. They're often useful. Let's choose the bike room entrance. So what this is now doing, it's making a secure connection, encrypted connection to the footage on this particular camera itself. So you can see this is a camera that we have in our bike room at our office in San Francisco. And again, it's fairly early in the morning in San Francisco right now, so not many bikes in there. But let's say, for example, that there was a robbery or burglary of a bicycle in the bike room. And how would we go about finding that footage? So what we can do is, rather than having to watch back 48 hours plus worth of footage, I can perform a motion search. Now, because those motion events are being indexed in the cloud, remember, I can first of all select a part of the screen that I'm interested in, or the frame that I'm interested in of motion. So let me just select the door, because it's probably where the perpetrator would enter and exit. And now I can take a look at all motion events that happened during the particular time period that we're looking at. So right now, there are no motion events. Now I can zoom out and zoom out again until I've now got one motion event here, but I can zoom out once more and I have multiple motion events. And I have more information about all these motion events that occurred, so I can see the duration of that event, the percentage of the entire frame that demonstrated motion, and the percentage of the region of interest, the highlighted area that had motion. So if I sort by region of interest, we've got 100% region of interest here, we've got 88% here. So let me just go to that one. And again, now I've selected that, finding that footage on the camera itself and playing it directly from the camera. So here we have somebody either leaving the office, so that's why we've seen the motion. The blue parts of the highlight screen is where we've seen motion in the frame. So this is how simple and straightforward it is. So let's say, for example, this was the person that's stolen this bicycle or a bicycle. I can now very easily export this footage, so create a public URL, share that with law enforcement really very easily. So just from that perspective, you can compare how much operational efficiency this approach has added. I don't need to be on site. I don't need to go retrieve that footage. I don't need to process the footage with additional software to first of all try to find when motion occurred, or indeed have someone manually looking through it. Now, this is the very first use case that we wanted to address. We have also started to add analytics to the camera, of course. So if I come into the analytics here, this particular generation of camera we introduced earlier on this year has built into it a very powerful processor, Snapdragon Qualcomm processor that you might find in most Android phones. Each and every camera has that built in, so it's a high amount of processing power. But if I go back to, let's say, Tuesday this week, I can take a look at hour by hour what happened or what this camera saw between 9 to 5. You can see it's automatically able to count people coming into and out the frame. It's not recognizing them. It's simply detecting if it was a person or not a person. You can see the most utilized hour is 4 p.m., probably when most people were collecting their bikes to go home, perhaps. Estimated peak occupancy was at around 3 o'clock, one person, and total entrances was 119. And we also have a motion heat map that we can build up hour by hour, see where the motion was. So you can see there was a lot of motion 9 to 10 when people are probably coming into the office, no motion during the day really, and then 3 to 5 p.m. where people are starting to leave the office. There are a bunch of parameters that we can also edit in terms of settings of the camera, rotation, HDR, sensor crop. You can also add a privacy window in case there was areas of this frame that you didn't want to record. can also have a look at quality and retention, so you can actually set up a schedule for when the camera should be recording. You can also enable motion-based retention, so that shouldn't be confused with motion-based recording, because motion-based retention, with motion-based retention, you have 3 full days worth of footage at any given point in time, and then beyond that, the dashboard will go out and splice footage out that wasn't having any motion in it. You can also decide resolution, video quality, and then based off all the parameters that you've inputted, it will give you an estimate of the retention here. So if I go ahead and enable motion-based retention, you can see that goes up to 69 days. So if I bump down video resolution, it goes to more than 90 days. So in this way, we can go ahead and increase retention to the desired levels. So I hope that provided a nice overview of the sorts of things we can do right across the dashboard. I'm going to move back to the presentation at this point now and just finish up. I talked a little bit about this during the demonstration, but we do want you to be very confident decisions you're making about your network and your IT infrastructure. So I want to give you the full opportunity to try out Meraki on your own network. That access point hopefully will be a good start to that as part of attending the webinar today, but you can request gear to trial, and this extends to the entire portfolio: switches, security and SD-WAN appliances, the security cameras. There's zero risk, so if you did find it's not for you, simply pop it back in the box and send it back to us, and we actually pay for shipping both ways. So if you are interested in trial, something we'd highly recommend. It's available at meraki.cisco.com/eval. So just to finish up, looking at the product families we have in the portfolio, we have an extensive range of indoor and outdoor Meraki wireless access points, ranging from the entry level to extremely sophisticated top-end access points. Also have the MX SD-WAN and security appliances, different models. Some of them also have wireless integrated, as well as the newer models that have embedded LTE modem, so you just need to pop in a nano SIM card and you're good to go there as either failover or as a primary link. Meraki Insight to monitor applications and cloud-based applications and WAN. So perhaps if your school is using a lot of Google apps, for example, that are really critical to the way that you go about teaching students, you may want to track that, or one of those applications or Google applications, and they can be tracked in Meraki Insight, and you can highlight really very easily if any application falls below thresholds you've set for performance of that. And then really to help investigate and troubleshoot further for the IT admin, the Meraki dashboard automatically suggests areas that you may want to investigate further. So if a Google app isn't performing as you expected, the dashboard will actually look at the data it's collected and suggest that, hey, maybe it's an issue on the application server itself, or maybe it's an issue with your WAN ISP provider. We also have access and aggregation switches in the portfolio, systems manager, endpoint management, or mobile device management, which you might be more familiar with, security cameras. But really the thing that combines and links all these together is the Meraki dashboard being the one single pane of glass to manage the entire portfolio. We have a lot of customers who will choose perhaps the wireless or switching to begin with, but soon, as their refresh cycles for their infrastructure come up, add more and more Meraki devices to be able to have that single platform to manage the entire IT portfolio. So next steps, we talked about the evaluation, something we'd highly recommend. If you're interested in finding out more details about particular models that we have, data sheets, it's all available on our website, meraki.cisco.com. We have our blog where we have entries about some new products that we're launching, thought leadership pieces. The URL for that is meraki.cisco.com/blog, or perhaps you're interested in a quote, in which case I encourage you to contact your Meraki representative. If you have a specific question, contact your Meraki representative. The reminder email will have their direct dial information, but you can also find details at meraki.cisco.com/contact. So we're at the end of the session. We want to cover on the slide deck, so I want to thank you very much, first of all, for time and attention over the past hour approximately, and hope to speak to you sometime soon in the future. Thanks very much now. Bye-bye.